Hi, everybody. Welcome to this second session that we are having in collaboration with our academic partner, JMC Academy from Australia. We are so happy to have with us James and Claudia from JMC Academy. Join us for this session. Very, very excited for this because it's a super cool setup that they have going. They are at the campus set up live to do this wonderful workshop for us. James is not only a fantastic musician, a songwriter, he is also the professor or lecturer at the GMC Academy, primarily teaching songwriting and composition. So we couldn't have asked for a better person to lead this session for us. And looking forward to all the exciting part that's going to come in. Thank you so much, James and Claudia, to coming in. And thank you, James, for taking the lead on this. And I look forward to an exciting session. Over to you guys.
Thank you so much. Thanks for that lovely introduction. It's great to be here, coming to you from freezing cold Melbourne, where it is something like 10 degrees and raining. And I'd like to introduce you to Claudia, who's a trimester 5 student here at JMC Academy at the Melbourne campus, a very fine songwriter and singer and all-round musician. And Claudia has kindly agreed to help me do this workshop today. So as was said, my name's James O'Brien and I'm a senior lecturer here at JMC Academy in the music department at the Melbourne campus. We have a campus in Melbourne, a campus in Sydney and a campus in Brisbane as well, but we're in Melbourne. And when I was asked about doing this workshop, I thought about, all the things one could talk about to do with songwriting, and there are many, of course. And I wanted a way to be able to play music, and I wanted a way to be able to play music live. And I thought about, what really is at the kind of the heart of songwriting for me anyway, and I think for a lot of people, and that is this sort of almost magical connection between a lyric in a song and a melody in a song, and how these two things kind of interact to create meaning, to create something that is not just the combination of the two of them, but something so much more, something that's almost kind of magical, I think. And I think a lot of us who write songs and enjoy music will relate to that. So we are coming to you from a music course where we have a diploma and a music degree, and we're going into obviously GMI, where you also have a very, very fine music course as well. So the workshop is angled towards musicians. It's angled towards people who want to get into the nitty gritty of songwriting. And when we talk about the nitty gritty of songwriting, it means that we end up talking sometimes about things that are a little bit, theoretical. And I always like to remind people that even though I enjoy that kind of things, music really is about the kind of the sound and the effect that it has on people. And so I always say, if it sounds good, it is good, theory or ideas be damned. But having said that, you can learn a lot from analyzing things in detail and really thinking about why things sound a certain way, why emotion comes across in a certain way. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this connection between music, or between, I should say, melody and a lyric. And we're going to examine the way they might interact through the lens of kind of 4 technical variables. And we're going to explore this not because we're looking for a formula for writing songs, not because we think we're going to necessarily find some kind of answers, but just to understand that varying some of these kind of things can really change the way a lyric kind of lands on our ears and the way an emotion lands, in our hearts. What you then do as a songwriter or a composer when you're actually making your work will depend entirely on your taste, the genre you're working in, and just the nuts and bolts of the song in question at the time. But hopefully we can create some kind of a conversation for you with yourself as an artist about how to kind of do things, in a more precise, detailed way, particularly when you're editing your work after you've had that first sort of flush of inspiration. So we might cut to some slides that we've got prepared, and we're going to move between slides and myself and Claudia performing some ideas live. So we'll get those slides up for you, and then we'll have a bit of a chat about the topic, and then go from there. So I've called the workshop The Melody-Lyric Connection, How Melodic Variations Can Affect Meaning and Emotion. And there's a picture of an Australian artist, Tash Sultana, who's an amazing musician and songwriter, and really someone who connects with a huge audience through this kind of combination of melody and lyric. So these are the four kind of technical areas that I've decided we'll look at today. There are an infinite number of ways you can pull apart and examine music and any other area in the arts, film and dance and whatever. But these are the four that I think are easy to kind of discuss quickly, easy to look at how they affect a lyric quickly. And they're certainly ones that songwriters will encounter every day, multiple times when they're in the trenches of composition. So it gets a little bit technical to start with, and I know maybe not everyone wants to do that, you know, on their lunch break if you're over in Delhi right now or at the end of the day in Melbourne, but don't worry, pretty soon we'll be able to balance that with hearing Claudia sing, which is frankly much better than anything else we've got to offer. The first one we've got here is a concept called cadential melodic pitch, which is a super fancy sounding term. And what that really means is that when we complete a phrase in our song, so when we come to rest in a piece of music, what note do we end on at that point? Because what note we end on at that point has a huge effect on how that lyric lands on us. Just the same way that speech can be affected by the same thing. If you kind of end on a particularly kind of interesting note, like if I go, oh my goodness, look at that, you're probably going to react very differently than if I say, oh my goodness, look at that. Now, both of those are kind of interesting and important things that I'm trying to draw your attention to. One of them is potentially dangerous. One of them is potentially more maybe interesting. And so that's something we'll examine. We might bring those slides up again. Sorry, FT, thank you. The next one we're going to look at is melodic contour. And this is the idea of basically, does a phrase in a melody go up, or does it go down, or does it do something else? The next one we're going to look at is melodic rhythm. This is not complicated. This is simply about how quickly the rhythm is going by in a song, fast, short, somewhere in between, moving from one to the other. And the last thing we're going to look at is a concept called phrase placement. And this is about where does someone start talking to you or singing to you in relation to the beat or the kind of the metric system that you're working in at the time. So let's go through them quickly one at a time, and then we'll hear some music. So when we talk about cadential melodic pitch, this first idea, this is where does a phrase come to rest? And we're going to get a bit music theory here. We're going to nerd it up for a moment. Basically, if you're in a given key and your phrase ends on the root note, the one of that key, or it ends on the third in that key, or it ends on the fifth in that key, most people agree that the melody feels at that point more complete, more stable, more at rest. In other words, it's as if someone says to you, you know what, I think I'm done here. And you know you're done. We call those closed phrases because they're done, they're closed. When a phrase ends on any of the other possible notes in a given key, so scale degree 2, scale degree 4, scale degree 6, or scale degree 7 to get fancy with it, then we tend to call those phrases open phrases because they feel more unresolved and more unstable. So that's like if I said to you, okay, we're done. Yeah, well, you're probably not if you end a phrase with an upward inflection like that. So it means that you know the melody is going to keep going. There's another penny to drop. There's something else is going to happen. This is true regardless of whether in a major or a minor key. Melodic contour was the next one. And this is not complicated. This is to do with the direction a melody takes. Melodies can move up, they can be ascending, they can move down, they're descending. They can move up, then down within a phrase. We call that an arch. They can move down and then up in a phrase, and we call that an inverted arch. Or they can stay pretty much stationary, which is also very effective. Point number 3 was to do with melodic rhythm, as I said, and this is really, as you can see, for those of you that are familiar with kind of rhythmic music notation, those two examples there, this is to do with whether notes are going for a long time, whether they're kind of slow moving, or whether they're very, very short, very, very fast. And you can tell just by me talking to you now that the effect on you kind of emotionally is very, very different. If I talk in very, very long, slow notes, the words get drawn out and you listen closely. But if I talk very quickly, you start to feel more agitated. You think that I've got something very, very important to say. And perhaps maybe even you might struggle to understand me. This next concept, phrase placement, is an interesting one. We've got 2 more fancy terms here, front heavy phrases, back heavy phrases. Not complicated. Front heavy phrases are basically any kind of phrase in a song that starts before the downbeat of the song, before an important bar, metrically speaking. So the classic one I always use is Hey Jude by the Beatles. It starts with this kind of pickup or anacrusis. Hey Jude. So something happens before the downbeat. Back heavy phrases, this is when a phrase begins after the downbeat has started. So we hear the sort of the beginning of the song or the beginning of the section, and then the voice and the melody kind of comes in. These really have a big effect on a lyric because when a melody is beginning before an important beat, it tends to feel more assertive. It tends to grab your attention more. When it starts after a downbeat or an important beat, it tends to feel a little bit more potentially hesitant, or perhaps a little bit more melancholy, or perhaps a little bit more unassertive. And this can really support a lyric really, 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 really well. There's a fantastic music educator called Pat Patterson who works out of Berklee School of Music. And I know that the crew over there at in Delhi know a lot about Berklee School of Music. He calls back heavy and front heavy phrases the body language of music, the body language, which I really like. You know, is a person leaning towards you and talking to you, or are they leaning away and talking to you? It feels very, very different. So that's our 4 main points. We might leave the slides for a second because I'm sure you're sick of looking at that light teal color or whatever that is. So cadential melodic pitch is a phrase open or closed. Does it feel complete or not? Has it ended on 1, 3, or 5 in the key or something else? Melodic contour, does the melody move up? Does it move down? Does it move up, then down, down, then up? Does it stay kind of static? We've got melodic rhythm, other rhythms in the melody, particularly fast or particularly slow. And then we've got this back heavy and front heavy phrases. Do the phrases begin before or on the downbeat, or do they begin after the downbeat, the body language? Now, all this would be academic and really not useful at all unless we start to see how they can affect a lyric. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a lyric that exists. It's from a song. We didn't write it. And we're going to basically explore this lyric through the lens of these 4 technical ideas. And we might get those slides up again, and I'll put the lyric there for you so we can have a read of it first. So this is the lyric. It's from a song called Let Me Down Slowly, and the artist is an artist called Alec Benjamin. And I'm just going to give you a second to read that lyric, and I want everyone to just read it to themselves in their head and just get a sense of what they feel like to you. So I'll just give you a moment to do that. The night is cold in the kingdom. I can feel you fade away. From the kitchen to the bathroom sink, your steps keep me awake. It's a nice little stanza. It's the opening stanza of the song. There's some emotion in there. There's some nice specifics. We've got some locations. So we've got a place for this kind of story to happen. And also we know a time of day. It's in the evening, and we know that the person singing is not having a good night's sleep. We don't know much more, but we know quite a lot given it's only 4 lines. And I think we know enough to be able to tell if a melody is helping that lyric or not. Now, not everything we do today is going to have a clear-cut answer because art doesn't work like that, right? But I want you to listen really closely as we hear Claudia sing these lyrics with these melodic variations, and ask yourself which variations for you work better and why. Or if it's not a case of better or worse, how is the emotion changing? I'll chime in and tell you what I think sometimes too, but I think it's mostly important that we decide for ourselves what we think, because you're going to be the people who are artists and writing songs and trying to figure out how this all works. So let's have a go. The first thing we're going to look at is this idea of cadential melodic pitch, and we're going to sing. This lyric, and we're going to have 2 kind of big phrases. The first one is going to end closed on the lyric "fade away," so it's going to end on the tonic of the key. And then we're going to have another big phrase, and it's going to end on an open phrase. It's going to end on the 6th of the key, which in this case, we're going to be in the key of B flat major. So the tonic is B flat, and the 6th scale degree is G. And I want you to have a listen and I'm going to put the music up on the screen, and I want you to think about how you think this is working in terms of meaning for the lyrics. So we'll get those slides up again. And now we'll hear Claudia sing the song.
The night is cold in the kingdom. I can feel you fade away. From the kitchen to the bathroom sink, your steps keep me away.
All right. Thank you very much, Claudia. Sounded awesome. So you can see there, first phrase closed, second phrase open. Now, before we leave those slides, let's try swapping this around. Let's try the first phrase open. So we're going to hear the 6th scale degree on the lyric fade away. And then we're going to hear the tonic on the lyric steps keep me awake.
The night is cold in the kingdom. I can feel you fade away. From the kitchen to the bathroom sink, your steps keep me away.
Right, okay. So let's cut back to myself and Claudia, and we will discuss this. Well, we won't really discuss it because I'm just going to tell you what I think. I'm sure all of you who've heard that have an opinion. It's a subtle thing, this first example. This is not a case of one thing is clearly terrible and one thing is clearly good. But for me, for my ear, when I hear fade away, and the lyric is, I can feel you fade away, that's a very, very unstable, sad kind of lyric. And I think ending on a note that doesn't give us resolution and completion supports that idea better. For me also, going to the end of the next phrase, which is keep me awake, landing on that tonic note, which is very kind of alert and very kind of present, supports this idea that the person's lying in bed dealing with this situation, which sounds like it's a breakup or something like that. They're not fading away. They're not going to sleep. They are very much there. However, this is a personal choice. That's just my opinion. What I really want people to do when they hear this is to think deeply about which of those two options they would choose if they were writing this song, because these are the choices we make every day as songwriters, and these are the choices that can make the difference between our song kind of landing and really affecting someone, or perhaps not doing quite as good a job as that. All right, let's get the slides up again and we'll look at the next variable and see what we've got. So we're moving on to melodic contour. This is less subtle than the last one. We're going to hear some really drastic changes here because I've really written these examples to show you this in the kind of most extreme light. We're going to start with the first phrase ascending and the second phrase descending. There's no ambiguity here. That is all the way up and all the way down. So let's see how this affects the lyric. Ask yourself if you think this is working emotionally for you.
The night is cold in the kingdom. I can feel you fade away. From the kitchen to the bathroom sink, your steps keep me away.
Right. Let's hear what it sounds like if we swap these two phrases. What if the first phrase is descending? What if the melodic contour of this is going all the way down and the second phrase, in fact, moves up? How does this feel emotionally?
The night night is cold in the kingdom, I can feel you fade away. From the kitchen to the bathroom sink, your steps keep me away.
Right, really interesting, isn't it? Really, really interesting. Let's leave those slides for a moment now. So I'm sure you've got an opinion on this. I'm sure everyone's got an opinion on this, and maybe when we have some questions in a little bit, we'll talk, a bit more in depth. For me, I prefer option 2 probably if I had to choose. I think the idea of that final lyric. Let me just get my notes here. The keep me awake with the ascending phrase to me seems to support that idea of being awake more, higher pitch, more alert, more awake, fading away again, descending down, perhaps more melancholy, supporting that idea more. There's no right or wrong answer here, but that's kind of where I lie. And if you feel differently, that's totally fine. Melodic contour, very, very, very powerful. And of course, our examples were quite extreme, really ascending, really descending. In real life, very often there's a kind of a mix of things, but it's good to exaggerate these variables when we want to hear their effect. All right, let's look at the next possible technical variation we can do. So we'll go back to these slides and we'll look at melodic rhythm. Now here things get really, really different. Melodic rhythm has an incredible effect on a song. It really changes the song completely, or a melody at least, for many reasons, one of which is it can completely undermine an emotion or support an emotion just with the immediate effect. And secondly, the amount of rhythmic material, of course, affects the number of syllables, which affects the amount of words that you have in a song. We've tried to keep the amount of words pretty much the same for all the examples so that it's easier to tell the difference. But you'll see here now the melody is using more fast rhythms. There's more semiquaver material there. And subsequently, we're going to hear more space between the phrases as well. So let's have a listen to this. This is a fast melodic rhythm, far faster than we've heard before. 2, 3, 4.
The night is cold in the kingdom, I can feel you fade away. From the kitchen to the bathroom sink, your steps keep me awake.
Interesting, right? It's a different song now, really, I think in reality. Once we start changing the melodic rhythm that much, it feels very, very different, almost moving into perhaps a different genre. You would arrange the song differently. You'd probably sing the song differently if you're a good interpreter of songs like Claudia is. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to change things up a little bit because I feel like, this is my opinion again, but I feel like the fast melodic rhythm here does not support this lyric as well as the previous examples we've had. I don't get the sense of the person lying, having a sleepless night in this difficult time of their life. I don't get that sense at all. I get a sense of a very different emotion. So what I've done, I've kept this rhythm pretty much intact, but I've rewritten the lyrics to something that I think matches the music now better. So we've got this kind of melody lyric connection that seems to be working in tandem, working together more perhaps than in the last example. So let's have a listen to this and see what we think. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Want no place I'd rather be than you and me. I don't care about the world, but I will defend. It's us versus them.
All right. So let's move off the slides for a moment and have a chat about that. So new lyrics whole new world, right? It's and I don't mean the song from the Aladdin film from the 90s. I mean, it's a whole new song once we change the lyrics and the melody. But for me, having a lyric that is an affirmation like that lyric is, we can do it, we're going to get through it, I'm with you, I support you, matched with this faster, more assertive rhythm is a good match. This is the melody lyric connection working better, I think, than in the previous example where we were probably not supporting the emotion of the original lyric by speeding up the melodic rhythm. So really interesting stuff there. But if you think differently, make a note. We'll chat about it later on. Maybe you're all like, no, I want the fast rhythm while the guy's lying in bed being sad. That's fine. All right, let's look at one more variation. And this is this idea of phrase placement. So if we scoot back, I'm going to scoot through the slides. Sorry, everyone hates people scooting through slides. If we look at all our previous examples, here's the one from Cadential melodic pitch. Here's the one for melodic contour. These are all back heavy. They all start after the beat, right? In all these examples and in the faster melodic rhythm, I played the chord on beat 1. And sometime after that, Claudia started singing the melody. So what if we try to change this? What if we move these phrases to be front heavy? What if we have an anacrusis, or a pickup bar as they call it in America? So the melody starts before the downbeat. This will change the body language of the song, as Pat Patterson says. It will make it feel more assertive. It will make the lyric feel a little bit more confident, perhaps. So let's see what we think.
The night is cold in the kingdom. I can feel you fade away. From the kitchen to the bathroom sink, your steps keep me away.
Now that's fascinating, I think. So for me, and personally, that can totally work, but it does change the lyric. Yeah, it's far less melancholy and sad, I think. And like I mentioned before, Claudia, who's singing these examples, is a very good interpreter of song. And I think as soon as a singer sees a front heavy phrase, they know that that melody is meant to have a bit more energy. The lyric is going to have a different emotional shade. And that's exactly what happened there. It's still sad, but it's a different kind of sad. What I've done next is I've taken the front heavy phrases and I've said, well, what if we roll with this kind of slightly more confident feel a bit more? What if we make the lyric really confident? So I've changed the lyric again, and we'll see how this works. Very similar front heavy phrases, but now we've got a different lyric that's no longer this melancholy evening scene. It's a whole different thing. Here we go.
I'm gonna always be there. There's no way I'll leave your side. We're gonna live forever. My love will never die.
Really, really interesting. So let's cut back away from those slides. Let's have a chat about that. Now our lyric is far more confident. It's talking about a person's devotion to another person. There's something about front heavy phrases supporting this idea more. And just think about it. If someone was going to tell you that they were going to be with you forever, that they really cared for you, which is exactly what that last lyric did, you would want them to be leaning in. You'd want them to say it with confidence. You wouldn't want them to go, I'm going to always be there. You'd want confident kind of body language. And that's exactly what the front heavy phrasing does. All right, let's cut back to those slides again. So this is what we've just looked at. We've looked at cadential melodic pitch. We've looked at this idea of open phrases, and closed phrases, and we've run the lyric through those to see which we preferred. Subtle difference with cadential melodic pitch. You know that I had a preference, but neither were terrible, I would say. Melodic contour really, really becomes apparent when it's exaggerated to the extent that we did in our examples. And I also had a preference here, but again, neither one was incredibly good or incredibly bad, but it definitely changed the feeling of the lyric. Then we looked at melodic rhythm, and melodic rhythm really did change the lyric. So all our rhythms earlier on were reasonably long. We moved to kind of a more semi-quaver based rhythm, and suddenly it felt like maybe our melodic choices and our lyric choices were perhaps at odds with each other. It wasn't quite working the way we'd like it to. And so we tried listening to the faster rhythms, but with a different lyric that perhaps was a better match. That seemed to work well, I thought. And then we looked at phrase placement, this back heavy and front heavy phrasing. And again, it wasn't terrible by any means to have front heavy phrasing with our original lyric, but it did change the feeling of the emotion of the lyric. And then we experimented with having the front heavy phrases, but with a totally new lyric, this one that expressed this kind of very confident kind of feeling. And that was definitely, I would say, unambiguously a really, really good match. There's definitely no right or wrong answers in any of this. I mean, there's no right or wrong answers in any creative pursuit, but it is very, very interesting to explore the details and the nuances that you can get when you start messing with some of these variables. And of course, there are many, many, many more. Experimenting with different combinations, particularly in the editing phase of writing. So after you've kind of already written your kind of song and you're trying to squeeze that little bit more out of it, this is a very powerful and important habit to develop as a songwriter, I think. Thank you very much. That's another wonderful picture of Tash Sultana. We might go back to us. Yes, here we are. So thank you so much, Claudia, for your contribution and learning those examples and singing so beautifully. That was fantastic. And I'm going to put you on the spot, Claudia. I'm sorry to do this to you because I said I wouldn't. I want to know, as a singer, right, as someone who's a very, very good singer and a very, very good interpreter of songs and a very good songwriter, for you, with that original lyric, because you've sung them a few times, which of those melodic variations for you felt like the one you'd want to sing if you had to sing one?
Probably the last one, the phrase placement one, the one that you rewrote. Like, I like space, I like syncopation, I like bringing in a vocal before like the actual first chord comes in. So yeah.
That's interesting to know. So that was the new lyric with the front heavy phrasing.
Yeah.
That felt compositionally the best. And if you had to choose one with the original lyric, what do you reckon about that?
Original lyric. Probably, like you said, which one was it? The second example, the one where it ended with the cadence one.
Yes,
Yeah,
the open or the closed phrase on "Me Awake."
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, good. Oh, and we did not plan this, by the way, but it looks like we're in agreement, which is frankly a relief. So that's good. Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So what we'd love to do is we'd love to hear from those who have tuned in today to the workshop. We have someone who can read out questions in the chat to us. And we can also, I think, hear audio. We want to hear your comments on any of those examples. We want to hear your experiences as songwriters, and if you've messed around with any of these variables, or if there's other important variables that these have reminded you of, or if you just have any other general thoughts in regards to the lyric melody connection. Is there anything in the chat, or should I play some, light bossa nova music to kind of cover? All right, here we go. Think we're not doing questions. Oh, we don't have any questions so far. You have to listen to me play this in that case. Do you have any questions for us? It would be really great if you could think of something, so we're not sitting here doing nothing. Do you have any questions for us? It can be about anything. Even the weather is better than dead air in a workshop. Well, we hope you've had a great day, and we hope you've enjoyed our session today. I think we're done. So if there are no other pressing matters or questions, I would really encourage everyone to, wherever you are, give a round of applause to Claudia, whether you be in Melbourne on Zoom, in Delhi on Zoom, on Facebook, anywhere. So thank you so much, Claudia. And I'd like to thank our technical team. Oh, we've got a question. Oh my God, I should have just padded that out a bit more, that amazing song I was writing. All right, we're going to get a question from the chat. Oh, that's a whole other thing. Yeah, right. How do you develop a simple motif? So for those who aren't familiar with that term, a motif or a motive is any kind of idea or theme in art, basically. And in music, that normally means a melodic idea. And the way that I think, or the first thing to focus on when you're developing a motif in a melody is to look at the rhythm. Because I think most people think about pitch, and rhythm is really what connects with people more, I think. So, and the first thing I would do is I would take whatever your idea is and I would just try repeating it until you can't stand it anymore. And then let your ear decide what needs to happen in order to make it kind of interesting. As soon as you've pushed it too far, you'll know, but you'll also be surprised how much repetition most good motifs can bear. And if it can't bear at least a little bit of repetition, then it's probably not good enough and you should ditch it. So that's the first thing, look at the rhythm. And then the other thing is if the motif is a little bit longer, so say you've got a couple of kind of little rhythmic elements in it, you can compartmentalize it. You can take a little bit out and repeat that. So let's say your idea is, right? Ba, 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 da, ba. You've got a few different things going on there. You've got the first note, which is the longer note, but you've also got that little phrase at the end, or that, not phrase, but that little kind of rhythmic figure at the end, the but-up. So that you could just extract from your little motif and you could use that and repeat just that. Or you could repeat the whole thing, of course. Or you could do some combination of the two. You could repeat the whole thing and then repeat that little faster fragment. So that can work as well. But rhythm is the answer to that question, really. Focus on rhythm. First, try repeating it until you can't stand it anymore, and then ask yourself what variation needs to happen. And also consider if there's any smaller parts within your idea that you can repeat as well. And then my last suggestion on that note is go and find a song you like and analyze the rhythm of the melody and see how much stuff is repeated. And I bet you will be amazed at just how repetitive most songs are, rhythmically speaking, in the melodic rhythm. Yeah, good question though. I like it. Anything else floating around in the chat over there? No? All right, well, what were we doing? Oh, I was about to give a big thank you to the technical team here. We've got a really great team here at JMC. We've got Kelton on one of the cameras. We've got FD doing the mix. We've got Andy who did some audio and also one of the cameras. And then we've got Elle working on sound as well. So I'd like to acknowledge their very good work today. And I'd like to really thank GMI for hooking up with us again to do another workshop, because it's been a lot of fun, and I really like what you guys are doing over there. So on that note, I think we are done, and I appreciate your time. And from Melbourne, we are signing off back into the cold.